This is a series of conversations with the people in the food and urban agriculture community in Los Angeles and beyond. I'm your host, Jess McBride, founder and director of Open Silo, and this week I'm joined by Erin Riley, owner of Hope Gardens. Erin, how's it going?
It's going great. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
Definitely. Erin was one of the first people I met in the urban agriculture community, and I can't even remember how, if it was like at a party or we stalked each other online, I don't know, but you've been doing this for so long, so I'm delighted to have you as one of our first people in the garden party. Let's talk about Hope Gardens. What's Hope Gardens in a nutshell, and kind of how did you get started?
Yep. So I'm Erin Riley, and I own Hope Gardens Landscaping. It's an edible gardening company, and I've had it for over a decade. We maintain, design, install vegetable gardens, and we really see things from the vantage point of building an ecosystem. So we used to do a lot of drought tolerant landscaping as well, because it's great to actually kind of embrace your entire home as part of that ecosystem. So right now we really just focus on gardens, edible gardens though. So organic vegetable gardens, and we mostly do home gardens. So we're, doing a lot of raised beds and container gardening. And so that's really my passion. And it's always been organic, and now talking about regenerative. So that's exciting development. I don't know how, I can't remember how we met either. I think we were both just smart enough to get off Instagram and go have coffee one day.
Yes.
And I was just so excited that you were bringing people together. I had always been kind of an island. I saw other people having businesses, but there was no organization. And I was also thinking that when I first started, it was all about the organics, and it was all about like farmers markets and composting. And it was a really exciting time. But I always, it was always hard for me to help people network their food into the community, to share it. And now it's such a vibe. The social justice part of this has really clicked, and it's just so exciting to see that part of agriculture exploding in Los Angeles. And you're like right there. I'm very excited. And I know you're probably slightly overwhelmed because there's so much now to pull together. It's almost can't keep up with it. Every time I'm on Instagram, I'm like, is that another? Is it another urban
And I mean, part of why I started Open Silo was because I was doing research on urban agriculture, and I kept kind of going down rabbit trails to find different projects and different people to interview. And it was sort of like no end of people doing projects, running urban farms, doing community gardens, connecting to the nonprofit sector. And I was like, there's not one place to find everyone. These people don't know about each other's work. And it's sort of infinite, which is something that we love about Los Angeles, right? No one lives in Los Angeles because they love like a small, finite town. But yeah, I think that's really true. And you're located up in Chatsworth too, right?
So Chatsworth is a very hot and windy place. We're up in the very far northwest side of Los Angeles. In fact, just a couple freeway exits away, it's Ventura. So, but it's very hot and very windy here. So I do feel blessed by that, because I'm growing vegetables in like the worst possible situation. So I feel like I can, tell anybody, look, if I can grow it at my house, you can grow it at your house. So that's always been kind of nice. But I agree, there's a lot of attention paid to like South LA, and now, of course, and rightfully so, East LA. And it's great, that all of those communities are getting attention. So I feel like Chatsworth can wait in line, but so, because we do have a less dense population, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I used to live in Van Nuys, and so, that was kind of the center of the valley. But I mean, the prejudice against the valley is long recorded. And even though we were where the orchards were, this was where agriculture was out here.
Yeah, I mean, Orchid Farms is up there, and there's still, there's kind of opportunity. That's where all like the agriculture zones, like in a zoning code sense, which no one really needs to know about, but like all the agriculture zones are typically up in the valley. And that was sort of the last, I would say that's like the last part of Los Angeles that kind of turned over from being agricultural to residential. But there's still a lot of opportunity with like larger pieces of land and yeah, a slightly less dense, depending on where you are, very much less dense area of town. So and so this is not your first career, right? Why did you make the move over to gardening of all things?
Well, I was in film, and like a lot of women, I stayed home with my kids, and I did that for about 8 years. I got a divorce and realized I really had to support myself and my kids in a much bigger way.
Hmm.
And like I said, it just so happened when that was happening, I was volunteering for the Obama campaign the first time. And that was, I mean, it was unbelievable fertile ground, not unlike today, where people were very much into advocacy
Hmm.
and volunteering. And I do think we had a real spike in people wanting to be involved in their communities. And again, at that point, Michael Pollan was writing his books. There was so much
Hmm.
going on about um, urban agriculture. And so I was very lucky. I sort of just grabbed onto the train. I always loved to garden, never vegetable gardened, believe it or not. Maybe I had a tomato every once in a while, but not really vegetable gardened. And yeah, I was just like, you know what, I'm going to do this, and started talking to friends. We planted raised beds in people's yards, just, here, take a raised bed, and just so we can try it out. And personally, it took me about 3 years to really feel like I had a clientele, that
Hmm.
wasn't just like straight referrals from friends. Like it
Right.
had a little momentum.
Yeah.
And I was just ready to give up. I thought 3 years, that's a ridiculous amount of time. Then to find out literally the average. Businesses don't turn a profit usually until at least 3 years in.
Yeah.
So not a business person at all, but it's been a real adventure having a business in Los Angeles. And I think just to being a woman is you just can't ignore it, as part of the paradigm
Yeah.
of experiences.
Yeah.
It's a very male-based, landscaping, contracting, still very strangely, like cooking. I don't understand how that's a male-based industry. All the chefs are men, all the women at home cooking are women, like what?
Yeah.
So everything's kind of the same too. You would think it was a traditionally woman, sort of female gardening, but the professionals are generally men.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. I think a lot of the people I see, especially in the nonprofit sector, or who are doing it just kind of for their families or for their community, are female. But when you get into that, like, here are big contracts to negotiate, here's how to get licensed, like a lot of times those are the people that tend to be male. And so you're one of the only people I know that are like doing vegetable gardens, but as a licensed landscape contractor. Can you talk a little bit more about that and that process, and why you kind of chose to go to that level instead of stay as just like, well, I'll just come over and like plant your seeds?
Yeah, so that's a very important thing that is unknown. And like I said, I've had a lot of experiences. So not all of them good, but I think that's just life. And I think the important thing is for me anyway to pass that information down. So I'm really glad you're letting me have this conversation. I was doing vegetable gardens, and I was, just puttering around doing my little business. And then I took on some landscaping jobs, one, because it just sort of made sense, that people want their entire landscape to be as native and pollinator attracting and natural as possible. And then the city started their Cash for Grass rebate program, and it was huge. It was just a ginormous program, and people loved it. So I moved over to doing Cash for Grass. Again, it still goes, with the whole sort of ecosystem building, take out that huge patch of chemical sod and put in a bunch of native plants. So, we were just doing tons of them. I mean, I think I did 100 of them. And out of nowhere, this woman came back and sued me. She just didn't understand plants, which is probably 80% of people. And, was wondering why there were weeds coming back when you rip out an entire lawn. There's going to be some stuff growing back. You're
Life
going to need
finds a way is what
yeah,
that is.
being sued over weeds. That's
That's cool.
part of the whole thing. So I didn't think much of it. I thought, well, we'll just have to go through this process, and I have all the paperwork and everything, it'll just be like that. Just going to go to small claims, defend myself, and go home. And when I got there, it turned out she was suing me for not being a contractor. And I thought, well, I don't know what she's talking about. I had this thing, I actually had something from the city written saying,
Wow.
these jobs did not have to be done by a contractor. And I turned out I was completely wrong. And the city was wrong. And California, all small claims is through the state. So it's state laws that you're up against, so city and county don't have jurisdiction. So they could tell people whatever they wanted, and it wasn't true. So I almost lost my business. She won. It took about 5 minutes for the judge to say, "Are you a contractor?" "No, I'm not." "Okay, I go with her." It was just like that.
Wow.
And it was like $6,000. So she was able to get the entire job back, and keep the job. She kept the garden, but I had to pay her the entire cost of the job. So that was a real eye opener. So I started doing research into, like, why do I have to be a contractor? I don't know anything about this. So working with the contractors board, found out that even if I just did edible gardens, which is all I really wanted to do anyway, I still had to be a contractor. So the state law is, if you do a job that is over $500, including labor and materials, you have to be a contractor.
Materials, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's $500,
Wow.
not 5,000, not 50,000. If you do a job and the total cost is $500, if you're making any improvement to the outside of someone's home, you absolutely positively have to be a contractor, licensed contractor. It's a CA-27. There is no law or exemption or anything for people that grow food, and obviously there should be.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely something that could, especially when there are sort of pro-urban agriculture things being passed at the state level, like the Urban Ag Incentive Zone. I feel like there would be totally an appetite for this kind of reform, but it's just kind of not on anyone's radar. So interesting to bring up to someone like Assemblywoman Sydney Kamlager is at the state level, and she's really pro-urban agriculture. I don't know, maybe we could get her to put this forward. I just think it's kind of a no-brainer that is just like a gap in the system. So
yeah, and if they want to have licensing, great, but it should be specific to edible gardening. The contractor exam, I spent 3 months studying, and the landscape contractor exam is hundreds and hundreds of questions, and 5 of them were on plants. Just
wow, cool.
So it's not a plant oriented license,
Yeah.
It's irrigation. It's so many things that have nothing to do with planting. But I think now that we're organizing, it stands a chance to get some kind of legislation on the books. Again, how fantastic would it be to come up with some kind of curriculum, some kind of certifying method. And the other problem, and I love the master gardeners dearly. I'm a master gardener from back in Pennsylvania. I think in a way that was and still is seen as a certifying process for gardeners, but that's also a very flawed system. It's not completely available to the public. You have to apply, and then a group of people choose who they want to be in the program. That's fine, except then that's not, it's not 100% accessible.
It's right. It's not really apples to apples, right? Of like, this is a certifying thing where like this makes sure that like anyone who wants to can have the knowledge and expertise that they want. They just are sort of, they're limited in their resources to provide that, but then that also limits people, the number of people who can get that status.
Yeah, I have seen it on some job some job sites, like, oh, you should be a master gardener. And I was like, well, it's just not available to everybody.
Yeah.
So we can't make that something, like a license is at least available to everybody. If you study and you pay your $500 to take the test, maybe that's not available, but you can take it.
Yeah.
You can do it. But I think it'd be great to have some kind of certification, because I know we all talk about growing young farmers.
Yeah.
What we're doing is trying to set up something to pass along. I'm 50, so I'm looking definitely for young people. I train people all the time. We have 20 somethings and stuff on our crew, we train them, but there's a legal side. to everything.
Mm-hmm.
And these are businesses people are going to have to run.
Yeah.
And I would be very interested and open to talking to people about that. That might be something fun to have a little breakout group about, just how to set up the business side.
Absolutely. I kind of feel like that's a gap that I've been seeing in the urban agriculture community is the Master Gardener program is one of the only visible things that's like, here, if you go through this program, you'll get this status and you'll get your training. And there are also some urban, like Cal Poly Pomona has an urban agriculture minor in their biology department. There are some things that you can do at college level, but I think at the layman's level, for folks like you to be able to pass down your knowledge, that's a huge way that we've like taught the coming generations how to grow food. And so to kind of have a lack of, obviously that can happen on a personal level, like you can reach out to a young person and have a mentorship, I suppose, but like as far, unfortunately our education system in general has been a little bit more formalized, and so I think we are kind of lacking that like farm school type thing where someone who is like, listen, I want to learn how to grow food, can just go through that program that's locally based. I mean, I think the other thing too is a lot of programs are, because they're not in Southern California, they're elsewhere in other regions that have completely different environments, that have completely different irrigation needs and things that will thrive there that won't really thrive here, with our really strict, like dry summer season. And, the fact that we have like a very mild winter and you can like grow all year round. So I think having a Southern California farmers education, program would be awesome. I'd love to see that happen.
Yeah, me too. And it's so interesting. We always talk about the seasons, and of course they're all different all over the country, but really all we have to do for our seasons is you're just like, it's kind of like moving a circle, right? And it's like our seasons just switch over a little bit. So like right now we're just coming out of what I call our winter. So our winter is August, September, October for the most part. And people should get in a mindset that that's when we're going to spend less time outside, between the heat and the air quality. So you can go out and cover your plants. You just, when you're in a winter situation, you're like, well, of course I'm not going to go outside. It's cold and my plants are dead. But in Los Angeles, people get very confused. Why are my plants dead? Well, because this is our winter.
That's so true.
This is when you go out less.
Yeah.
This is when it's not safe sometimes to go out. And this is when you cover your plants. So, and we're about now to start, this wonderful season, which is, kind of like our spring, our fall, winter, again, the words are wrong. But, we're about to enter our best planting season. And I feel like people in Los Angeles don't quite understand that. They still wait till spring. And then spring's fine. Nothing against spring. But this is our spring. Fall, the winter actually is our spring. Yeah. And that's when people should really double down. And because it's the most enjoyable time to be outside. And it's nice now until what? May.
Yeah, no, our garden totally explodes during the winter, the winter. And I mean, it's so interesting that in storytelling, in, so books and film, it's like, we're like winter, that's the dead season, it's covered with snow and like nothing happens and we're waiting till spring. And I do feel like I always like waiting for fall and waiting for like winter, because that's when things come alive here. Like that's when the hills get all green, the grasses are growing, and
light, there's something about the light, right?
Yes. And that isn't like in our sort of cultural mindset, right? Like we're thinking of like winter, like close everything down, put all the mulch out, it's like, and that's just not the case with our corner of the world. And that's so interesting. This was really inspiring. And like, how do we change that and have like, like the winter planting festival or something?
That's why I try to get winter workshops up and going. People really should embrace winter. Summer plants are so difficult to grow and they take so long to produce. Winter is like boom, boom, boom.
Oh yeah.
It's so great.
Yeah.
And again, so much more pleasant to be outside. And people just don't realize that. So yeah, and these are the kind of like information and stuff that we want to pass down. I think too what we were talking about a minute ago, and as women, we're denied opportunities. There's just no, you can't deny that. We are denied opportunities. Coming up, let's say as a contractor, right? When I became a contractor, just to even apply to become one, I was supposed to have been in an apprenticeship for 7 years or something like that.
Oh, cool.
That whole thing doesn't even work anymore. I mean, who the hell apprentices, in an organized way? I mean, what is it, the 40s? No one offered an apprenticeship to me. No one's going to be like, hey, lady, come be a landscape contractor with me. It's just not passed down in that way.
Yeah.
And then the same thing can be said, for communities of color and stuff, they also are denied those opportunities. They might, only be pointed towards like a mow and grow opportunity, that, instead of being seen as a professional landscaper.
Yeah.
So it's like we need to make a little avenue here for people to move through, to get education and to be legal, both,
Yeah, I definitely think, and I can imagine a lot of gardeners listening and being like, I do not want to respect this gatekeeping situation. Like, I just want to do what I want to do. I think it's part gatekeeping, it's part safety, I guess. But I think that safety can really easily become an overregulation to keep people out. And I think that, I think in 2020 with the, the protests, I think that has really inspired even me, even like I love to think differently, to really be like, oh, why do we have these regulations? And is that really because of safety? Safety can sort of cover a multitude of sins. Or is that because you want to maintain control?
And so we're talking about safety and regulation and control, and that the other problem with that is there's a financial element, and again, that's what keeps under privileged communities out of the game, because it costs $500 just to take that test, and then it's like something, it's thousands of dollars a year just to stay compliant. Well, that's ridiculous. It should be on a scale that is either based on what your income is,
right,
or the community you're from, or whatever, that everyone, that the biggest landscape contractor in the city pays exactly what I do to the state.
Interesting. Yeah, that's
not so I'm running the same thing because I'm starting this fertilizer company, and I knew selling fertilizer, getting licensed for that, it's obviously going to be difficult. It's going to be labs and all kinds of stuff I'm going to have to jump through. Understood. But we just wrapped up our research on what it would take to become certified organic. $10,000. $10,000. And that's not the labs. That's just the fee we have to pay to the people who have decided they're in control of what organic is.
Is that annual, or is that a one-time?
Yeah, there's some annual costs in there for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is the state. The state is the licensor. The national level is not such a big deal, but the state of California and the grip they have on what they consider to be organic, and who is even in charge of that? Who informs that?
Yeah.
Where's that money go? They give $10,000 to Roots for Peace, and so that's actually, we're going to take the word organic off the bag. I'm just not going to play the game. It just makes no sense at all. First of all, it would seem it's a First Amendment rights to put the word organic on anything I want to. I don't know how somebody could say, it's not, I'm not buying their logo. I'm not asking to use.
Organic is not a brand. It's like a method and a fact. I don't know. Oh my gosh. This is a great, it's a great point. I mean, it's like, are we going to get to a point where the word regenerative is a licensed word, and, and then we'll find a new word, it's just like, on one level, we want, because we're so separated from our food system, we don't know our farmers. We imported it. So we're like, well, I don't know, is Joe's farm, is it organic or not? And so we're sort of like trusting the state agency to tell us if that's true or not, because they've, hopefully taken that Joe's $10,000 and gone to look at his operation. But I think that that's the whole existence of that is a symptom of the fact that we are separate from our food system. And we don't know Joe at all, right? Not at all. We've never been to that farm. We don't know him, and we don't trust him. And so we're like, Joe, you have to go through this formalized system. And we somehow trust the formalized system, which is like, I don't know. But yeah, I think that that's completely a system or a symptom of being so separate. But let's take this opportunity to segue into your new business venture, which is the vegan fertilizer.
Yeah, so super excited. Vegan, animal-free, cruelty-free fertilizer. It's called Stewards. It was Stewards Animal-Free. Yeah, hopefully they can't take that, you know.
I know, just, you can't have a name at all.
You cannot. And God knows there's enough hoops to jump through. I get jumping through hoops. Just handing someone 10 grand to do nothing, you know, it doesn't make any sense to me. So I have been making my own fertilizers since the beginning. You know, that seemed like, I think when you're have a business like mine, you're going to plant vegetable gardening, you want to make it, you know, different than you know, you want to provide a whole service. And so mixing my own fertilizers seemed like a great thing to do. So I'd start, it's all organic, of course. And, you know, I'd start with a base, but then we'd add other things, you know, researching exactly what each ingredient does, and by moving the levels around, it's more appropriate for different seasons. It's more appropriate, like let's say for tomatoes, you know, you have an early fertilizer, and then you actually have a mid-season fertilizer just for tomatoes. So, you know, this is a service I provide my clients, to have all these specific fertilizers. And we also feed the soil, so it's not just food for your plant, it's food for the soil. So there's humic acid and fulvic acid and all kinds of things in there that feed microorganisms. So it's just like the best fertilizer ever. And then, but I had lots of animal products in it. It just didn't really connect with me. You know, I don't know what the word is when you have to be exposed to something 1,000 times and then the light bulb goes on. So you see, it's been like a learning from the whole time, but then you're like, ding. And I work with a lot of kids, you know, we do a lot of school and community gardens, and I would pour this little fertilizer into their hand. And part of my shtick with them was, guess what's in this fertilizer? And they would go, I ask all these things, and we get to poo, and they get a, ooh, you know. And the fact was, they were right. Like, I was eliciting a reaction that I knew was coming, but not really listening to it. I mean, there is an ooh factor. In fact, there's a giant ooh factor. Because it's not just poo, of course, and I would just do poo. But when I would do workshops with adults, I would tell them, of course, that it's the animal parts, you know, and I would tell the whole story. Because I would literally get out the fertilizers. You can see them and look at them. This is bone meal. This is blood meal. This is feather meal. And when you really think about what that is and where that comes from. And so one of the really good things about OMRI, so OMRI is a nonprofit, and that is the national level of qualifying soils and amendments as organic. And one of the great things about them is that they're transparent. Now that might also end up being their downfall, because I went and looked, you know, because they have websites where you can search what's in these different fertilizers and soils that they approve. And there it is, Foster Farms chickens. I mean, I don't understand that. In what universe is ground up Foster Farms chickens organic? I fail to understand that 100%. Can't imagine a world or a definition where that's okay. Now, if someone's at their own house and you have your own chickens and you have your own manure, go to town. You know, I'm not trying to make a political statement about veganism, you know, but I'm talking about that there's all these bags out there with that. And I imagine a single bag can contain 1,000 souls. You know, when Jamie Oliver looked into like Whoppers and found out that a Whopper doesn't have 1 to 100, 1,000 cows. Each Whopper has 1,000 cows. That's the same thing with these fertilizers.
Yeah.
How are they trackable in real, and these are the agencies that want $10,000 from me to prove my stuff's organic. I mean, the agency is, in my mind, not, you know, shouldn't be recognized. I just don't see how animal byproducts belong in our fertilizers if it's not a local level kind of situation or a community-based or farm-based situation. So those are slaughterhouses and those are factory farms, which are the two things organic, I think, wouldn't be in favor of. So I decided to start my own line. There's Down to Earth has a good line has a single vegan fertilizer that they sell. But I thought, again, just because I feel so moved about the situation, that the whole company has to be animal free. If you're not an ethical company, then you just can't sell an ethical product. I mean, I think that's how most people feel. especially how organic was supposed to be. It wasn't just about the product, it was about the process and the system.
Right.
Food safety, especially when we're talking about social justice, food safety is right next door.
Mm.
Because it's one thing if you plant a garden somewhere, but if those people aren't enjoying the highest level of nutrition and safety in their food, then what's the point?
Mm.
We were trying to get away from unsafe food and like poisons and chemicals on our food. How are we not classifying bull crap as a chemical at this point? Are you kidding me? Again, not bull crap from your own cow at your own house. I'm talking about a bull crap from a slaughterhouse or whatever the hell it comes from.
Yeah.
Don't tell me that is chemical free. I just don't buy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't buy it.
Do you ever, because you're in Chatsworth, which is like a huge horse keeping area, like what is your thought on like horse manure that is like, from people's pets essentially?
Well, first of all, I mean, I just don't think anyone wants to handle it, and you just don't need it. And for our stuff, that's a really high in nitrogen. It needs composted.
Mhm.
There's a process to using manures. So it's not just a quick fix. So yeah, and it's hard to handle. It's hard to store. It's hard to transport.
Mm.
I would literally rather someone grow yarrow in their yard and grind it up and put it in there on their plants. I mean, people should definitely compost instead of using animal manures. It's just not necessary. And of course, I'm talking about home gardens, community gardens, school gardens. I'm not talking about large agriculture. Specifically in those places, there's just really no need for manure.
Yeah.
Compost is much better. Manure is really, I mean, it's obviously a bit toxic. You can't just put it right on your plants.
Yeah. So without giving away any trade secrets, what are some of the things that can like make a fertilizer still effective but be animal free?
Yeah, so bone meal especially is a very, very popular amendment. And I know when you start looking at things, you peek under the skirt a little bit, you see, well, of course, they've been feeding us this as a fertilizer. This has been happening for generations because there's a supply chain. There's a lot of bones to get rid of, and they're hard to get rid of. So if you can figure out a way to boil them and grind them down and sell them to people, you're damn sure they're going to be pushing it.
Yeah.
So that's what's happened. It is an okay source of fertilizer. It's bulky, as you might imagine a ground bone to be. So when you buy a bag of fertilizer, and it can be mostly bone meal. Bone meal is a slow release fertilizer. It's just like adding eggshells to your soil it's not a waste of time, but that your plants are not going to be enjoying the benefits of that eggshell for years to come. It takes a very long time for those to break down in the soil. So calcium in general takes a very long time. So bone meal has been great because it's bulky. So it fills up that bag, makes you look like you're getting a lot when you're not. And it's a slow release fertilizer. So it doesn't burn, and it does stay in the soil for a long time. So that's good. So bone meal is a source of calcium. So there's lots of other ways to get calcium, and everything has a consequence. I just want to always say that. I'm not here promising some kind of magic. Everything has a consequence. So a lot of the stuff we use is mined, rock minerals and stuff, very popular. Now mining, of course, also has its consequences. I think, factory farms or some mining, I'm just going to go on the side of mining for now. So we get rock phosphates, all kinds of rock minerals, which are present in our native soils. So what we're trying to do is replicate what works in our native soils and use that in our containers. So, the presence of worms, the presence of microorganisms. Naturally, there's a lot of rock minerals in our soil, from the time the dinosaurs started dying, any animal died, became rocks, died inside the soil, and now they bring that nutrition to the soil. So when they mine that, that's what they're mining, is like all of this stuff that's aged in the earth. There are also lots of other byproducts of vegetables, be it soybeans, all kinds of things, the byproducts of alfalfa. And so there's lots of suppliers of non-animal organic fertilizers that are completely plant-based or mined. So that is most of what goes into our fertilizers. And they're much smaller. You don't need as much because it's not bulked up with the bone meal. And then, of course, we're going to encourage the composting, because that you just can't ignore it. And why bother? It's hard to sell composting. Like I literally can't sell it to you. You have to do it at your own house. So that's like a real uphill battle, because it's not marketable. And our whole society is based on what we can market to people. And the rest gets dumped. And then there's people like you and me and all these other people trying to teach people about composting.
Yeah.
There is no quick fix.
No.
We have a quick fix. That's fucking called Miracle Grow. We don't want that. So now we have to, like, I had a home birth, and I remember at one point going, isn't there an easier way? And I was like, oh yeah, I chose not to do
It's not. Well, that's a really interesting point where it's like composting is work. It's not a quick fix. The quick thing is to throw your organic matter in the trash. Like, that's the easy thing. And no one is going to fine you for that. You're not going to get in trouble for that. To actually create a compost pile, manage it, if you have worms, even better, but like also takes work and mindfulness, like that's more work. But that's actually putting you in the cycle. That's actually putting you in a healthy cycle in the world. And people feel really good about it. Like, it's like, maybe that's what we try to sell, right? Is the good feelings.
Yeah. And
that good feeling is going to come with work. You're not going to, it's not avoiding that.
No. And it's the best part of it. I mean, you can't do it without it.
Yeah.
You know, you really can't. I mean, hopefully we can get the city, you know, to keep moving in the right direction. And I think the world will move in the right direction, that composting, you know, is more important than recycling, because recycling just isn't working out. But composting is something we really can do. And a lot of people are doing it.
Yeah. I mean, LA Compost is creating hubs in, you know, at like local urban farms, local churches, local community gardens, and places that actually do have space. And hopefully, you know, will be eventually thousands of places. You know, it's just a handful of places now. But I think that concept of like, this should be around like a compost hub should be around the corner for everybody, no matter where you live, whether that's a neighbor's backyard or, you know, a local community center.
I mean, you know, they already dump compost at community gardens. You know, they already have these places set up.
Oh, yeah.
They need something where you can drop off, you know, like where you can drop off your brown waste, or you can drop off green waste, you know, so you feel like you're part of the process. And there are some organizations doing that, thank God. I'm going to do this workshop on Saturday about composting, and people are just so confused, and it's the simplest thing. That's the problem. It's too simple.
The utter joy of like seeing the rich compost that you knew was your kitchen scraps, and you know, the fruit that you forgot to eat, you know, you're just like, and then you see that come out as incredible soil at the end. You're just like, that is fascinating. And I had almost nothing to do with it, right? Yep. Like, you put it in a pile, but like, it was things that you had no control over, that the microbes, the worms, all of that, where like, I didn't do that work, honestly. And I just got to be part of it. I think that's the joy that composting is. And once people understand that at the end of the process, there's like no way to like really, really communicate that until they experience it themselves.
Yeah. It's a real joy. Like you said, the first joy is when stuff goes bad in your fridge, you don't beat yourself up. That's
true.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now that's fine. It's fine. I didn't eat all that food. And then you get to use your yard waste, and you get to grow earthworms, and you get to attract all this great stuff to your yard. And like you said, then you're left with this living soil that cannot be purchased. You can purchase mine, and you can purchase, you know, Brits, but you know, really it can't be purchased. It can't be purchased in a store because it just doesn't live. I think we're up for a paradigm shift on a lot of things. You know, we have this groundswell of support and interest now, and hopefully there can be some really sage wisdom that comes out of this. You know, and I think we need to also harken back. I've been buying I already have a lot of garden books. In fact, if you ever want to open a library, which is the only,
which I do,
garden books, thinking someday I'll just donate these to a library, because I just.
Dude, I feel like I want to, and then it's like, well, we have to wait till such a time as people can like feel okay in the same space with each other. I would love to have a library and like meeting space for Open Silo, but you know,
you know? Yeah. I'll
take your books. I'll come steal them.
There's a lot of wisdom, you know, and people have been growing. There are people growing without animal products, you know, and it's a choice. I think the more choices, the better. You know, it's like everybody has to do it all the time. I also go with an 80-20 rule. I think if you're doing something right 80% of the time, you're doing it right 100% of the time. Nobody can do everything right all the time. And it's not about finger pointing. We got to get, we're past that.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to sit around and watch, big companies decide that their products are organic when I know how far away they are from what most people are assuming organic means.
Hmm.
So, and I agree. I love regenerative. I mean, thank God just at the last minute, someone came up with a new buzzword because because there's a lot of buzzwords, let's be honest. I mean, regenerative is not a new word, but it could be any word, climate garden, whatever we want to call it.
Climate garden.
But
Yeah.
I went and
We
changed
gotta
all.
get some words on deck for when people sort of appropriate regenerative to their own purposes.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, veganic is a big word, but it's pretty awkward. I don't know. Veganic is
Veganic. Oh yeah. Yeah, that is we'll workshop that.
okay, good.
Speaking of sage wisdom, I would love to close out with like, what would you, what advice would you give someone who's starting out, because I've definitely met quite a few people who are like, I want to help people install their own gardens and work with, people to do that. What advice do you have for folks like that?
Yeah, I think if you're starting out, I mean, like we talked about apprenticeships, I mean, that's something we should do. That there's no reason there can't be a somewhat formal process for that. So I hire a lot of people who just email me and volunteer wanting to work on gardens. So I would definitely request, even if someone's doesn't have a job opening, offer to go tag along or learn along, and then grow your own. Grow it at your house and write stuff down. I have learned it's only taken me so long to start writing stuff down. Obviously, I wouldn't be starting a fertilizer company if I wasn't gotten to the practice of writing things down.
Yeah.
Keep your own log, grow your own things. I always grow something new every single year. And like I said, there's a lot of bad pancakes. It's not a big deal. It's a bad plant. It's not a bad gardener. People are like, I tried. That's not past tense. There's no tried. You're trying. Try again. Try again.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm trying every day, and it's fine. It's normal to fail. And that's what's very hard about client work, because they pay for it. And, it's like your kid getting an F in private school. You're like, I paid for this. You paid for your garden doesn't mean it's going to succeed. And that's that's nature. That's not you. So just keep trying, for sure.
I love that. I love the idea of like plant a new thing every year as a sort of way to be like, yeah, and you'll probably fail at it, maybe, like, and that's part of life. Like, you need to be constantly comfortable with failing, or else you will stay the same.
Yeah, this is a tough, vegetable gardening is not for the weak of heart. So, know that you can do it, and it's really the most natural thing in the world to fail. I do a lot of yoga, and we always say, you have to fall to stand. You have to learn in balance poses, right? You have to.
Oh yeah. Well, it's so long ago that we learned to walk, right? We forget how much falling is involved with learning how to even stand up, much less walk. And I think that's a delightful thing about being able to see babies and young kids, is like, you're like, oh yeah, I was an idiot at one point.
Yes. Oh, your teenage years or your 20s. Yeah.
Well, this has been a delight. How should people like follow your work and find you on the internet if they want to get in touch?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at Your Hope Garden, and then that's my website as well, yourhopegarden.com. So
very cool.
Yeah, and there's lots of free information on my website. Love to give it away. And I also just want to say too, the Instagram feeds and stuff makes it look like everything's perfect, and it's not. That's just an Instagram feed. That is not the totality of anyone's garden. So
your Instagram feed is very wonderful too. Like it does make you seem like this goddess of gardening, which you are, but definitely is. Maybe you should post some dying or like bug eaten plants sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this happens to me.
Yeah.
Well, this is great. This is a wrap. This is the first episode of the Garden Party. Thank you for viewing, and we'll see you next time. That's it.
Want to start all over?
Let's just start all over.